They will tell you to be yourself, but Machiavelli would call that a trap. The self you inherited was shaped by fear, comfort, and the quiet desperation to be liked. That version of you was built for survival, not dominance. And if you keep carrying it forward, you will never become who you were meant to be. Self-mastery demands a funeral. You must bury the version of you that flinches, explains, hesitates, not someday, now, and in its place, build someone they can't manipulate, can't predict, and will never forget. You will never become powerful by asking for permission to exist. The earliest version of you, the one trained to smile, nod, seek approval, and blend in, must die. That version was not designed. It was programmed by weak parents, broken institutions, childhood fear, and that version is still running the show every time you hesitate to speak, overthink a text, replay a failure, or shrink yourself to make others feel comfortable. The truth is, you don't need healing. You need transformation. You don't need closure, you need silence and strategy. When a man carries that old version into adulthood, he becomes a slave in a nice shirt. The need to be liked becomes a leash. The need to be validated becomes a collar. And the tragedy is, most never question it. They live their lives inside a personality they never chose. But self-mastery starts with one ruthless act. Kill the part of you that needs to be chosen, accepted, praised. Bury the people pleaser. Burn the version that apologizes for ambition. Starve the voice that asks for permission. If you want to rise, you must offend. You must walk away from rooms that no longer fit your standards, not your comfort. And most of all, you must accept that being misunderstood is the tax of becoming undeniable. You will lose people. You will lose softness. But in return, you will gain silence, clarity, and the spine to walk alone. And that is the beginning of power, not power over others, but power over yourself. So here is your first and final warning. The greatest version of you cannot be summoned. He must be built, and the price of building him is everything weak about you. Now dig the grave. A powerful man is not found, he is forged. And the tool of that forging is not the world's opinion, but his own design. Most people drift through life carrying a name and a backstory, mistaking that for identity. They decorate it with titles, trauma, or trends, but never ask, who do I want to become, regardless of what built me? Machiavelli understood that the world bends for those who are not just self-aware, but self-designed. If you want to become the best version of yourself, you must stop reacting and start sculpting. Identity must be shaped like a weapon intentionally, sharply, and with the aim to cut through weakness. You begin by deciding who you will never be again. The man who folds under pressure. The man who over-explains. The man who lets hunger for praise corrupt his purpose. That man must go. And in his place, you build someone with a code, not just feelings. A man who shows up, not because he feels like it, but because it is written in his laws. You write those laws with your routines, your disciplines, your silences. Identity is not self-expression. It is self-discipline in action. You cannot trust feelings. They lie. They fluctuate. They are shaped by sleep, sugar, and strangers' opinions. But your code? That is sacred. It should be so clear that even your worst day cannot shake it. Who are you when no one's watching? When the applause stops? When the praise dies? That is the man you are. And if you don't like him, change him, quietly, strategically, with no announcement. The world is filled with men waiting for a spark. They read books, they watch videos, they talk about mindset. But fire doesn't come from consumption, it comes from structure. You must become boring before you become great. The man who trains, sleeps early, eats like a machine, and treats his time like gold will always outrun the man who waits to feel motivated. The difference is identity. One man lives by default, the other lives by design. You must decide right now who you want to become 5 years from now and start behaving like him today, not when it's convenient, not when you feel ready, right now. Identity is not what you say you are. It is what you repeatedly do, tolerate, and refuse to negotiate. And once you treat yourself like a weapon, the world will feel it even in your silence. You will no longer walk into rooms looking to be seen. You will walk in knowing exactly who you are. And that changes everything. If you cannot control your emotions, someone else will. And if you cannot master your reactions, you will never master your reality. Machiavelli did not teach men to feel deeply. He taught them to feel strategically. Emotional immunity is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming untouchable. Most people are trained from childhood to perform their pain, to explain it, to decorate it for others' comfort. They mistake emotional leakage for authenticity and wonder why their lives remain under someone else's power. Every time you react without control, every outburst, every sulk, every trembling apology, you are handing over your influence like coins on a tray. You think they see your vulnerability and admire it. No, they see it and calculate. In politics, war, and power, emotion is a map. It reveals your weak spots, your blind sides, your desperation to be seen. And once exposed, it will be used. The world is not kind to those who bleed openly. If you want to win in silence, you must suffer in silence. You must take the rage, the jealousy, the shame, and refine it. Turn it into steel. Do not explain your triggers, dismantle them. Do not announce your growth, demonstrate it in your restraint. Emotional immunity means this: they can insult you, and your eyes do not move. They can betray you, and your code stays intact. They can praise you, and your hunger does not shift. The emotional man is manipulated by every wind. The immune man charts his own weather. He is calm in chaos, composed in rejection, and deadly in his stillness. He is not above emotion, he simply does not serve it. He uses it as fuel, not scripture. And this is where power begins. Because the one who can stay still in a storm is the one who owns the storm. So train yourself. When anger rises, go quiet. When fear creeps in, move anyway. When doubt shouts, let your action drown it out. Let the world provoke, and provoke you will remain unreadable, unshaken, immune. That is not repression. That is self-possession. And no man can rule the world if he cannot rule himself. Your silence must become your fortress. Your discipline must become your sword. And your emotions, they must become your servant, not your master. Because in the end, the strongest man in the room is not the one who roars. It's the one who feels everything and shows nothing. The world only claps for what it can see, the achievement, the image, the outcome. But the man who masters himself knows that what truly builds power is what no one sees. The invisible work, the hours done in silence, when no one is watching, no one is cheering, and no one will ever know. The weak chase recognition, the strong chase repetition, and the strongest become obsessed with the unseen. The early morning routines, the quiet refusals, the small acts of war against laziness and distraction, that is where the throne is built. not in public, but in private. Machiavelli would not tell you to flaunt your progress. He would tell you to conceal it, to guard it, because anything the world can see, it will try to control. But what is invisible becomes untouchable. The man who trains in the dark does not fear the spotlight. He arrives prepared, not hopeful. He does not gamble on momentum, he manufactures it. He does not wait for the muse, he shows up, tired or not, and performs. This is not motivational. This is mechanical. You must become addicted to execution, not excitement. And you must stop confusing action with performance. If no one ever saw you win, would you still train like a killer? If the world ignored your greatness, would you still rise like a king? These questions will reveal your core. Because if your grind is tied to being seen, you will burn out the moment the applause fades. But if your grind is tied to who you are, not how you're treated, then nothing can stop you. Not heartbreak, not failure, not even obscurity. Most men fail not because they lack talent, but because they refuse to outlast boredom. They want fireworks. They want dopamine. They want proof that the work is working. But real growth is invisible at first. It looks like nothing is happening until everything changes at once. So master the boring. Master the days where progress feels imaginary. Master the repetition that breaks lesser men. Because when the world finally sees you, they won't understand how you became what you are. And that is the point. Let them believe it was luck. Let them believe it was talent. But you will know the truth, it was the invisible work. The hours they skipped, the nights you stayed, the moments you could have quit, but didn't. And that is what makes you dangerous. Not the flash, but the foundation, built in silence, unshakable. There is a voice in your head that does not belong to you. It was built over time, piece by piece, by teachers who punished your defiance, by parents who rewarded your silence, by friends who praised your softness. And now, without realizing it, you carry an invisible audience in your mind. Every decision you make is run through them. You imagine their approval, their judgment, their reactions. You shrink your ambition in case it makes them uncomfortable. You soften your voice so it won't sound too much. You hesitate before doing the thing you know you must do because some version of them is watching. This is not self-awareness. This is mental slavery. Machiavelli warned, "The man who is shaped by the crowd is never fit to rule it." If you want to become the best version of yourself, you must kill the audience in your head. You must unlearn the habit of explaining yourself, of checking for applause before you act, of asking, "What will they think?" before you even take the first step. Because here is the truth, they are not thinking of you. They never were. And if they are, it's only because you've given them something to mock, control, or envy. The man who builds in silence, not for validation, not for eyes, becomes terrifying. He is no longer acting for a stage. He is acting from code. And that kind of man cannot be manipulated. He no longer plays a role. He becomes the director of his own life. Every time you edit yourself to be digestible, you are shrinking your power. Every time you ask for permission to change, you are handing your strength to ghosts. And the longer you do this, the harder it becomes to hear your own voice through the noise. So burn the imaginary stage. Walk off it mid-scene, if you have to. Let the audience in your mind scream. Let them call you arrogant, distant, selfish. Let them. Because their approval is a drug that numbs you, and you will never be great while addicted to it. Freedom begins the moment you stop performing. Power begins the moment you stop rehearsing your life for others. You do not need applause to make a move. You do not need agreement to take the throne. All you need is silence, a spine, and the decision to live by your own law. That is the beginning of mastery, not of the world, but of yourself. Let them talk, let them wonder, let them fade. And you move forward. The more you need, the more they own you. That is the quiet truth no one wants to admit. You think needing love makes you human. You think craving validation is harmless. You think dependence on comfort, praise, attention, luxury is just part of modern life. But Machiavelli saw through that illusion. He knew that every man who needs too much is just one threat away from collapse. A man who needs nothing cannot be threatened. A man who craves nothing cannot be manipulated. And a man who masters his needs will never be ruled by someone else's hand. Look at your life. Where are your dependencies hiding? In the way you light up when someone texts back, in the way you break when they don't, in the way you scroll, hoping to feel something, in the way you chase attention, even if it's negative. This is not freedom. This is quiet addiction. It has been dressed up in therapy words and motivational slogans, but it is still the same weakness. The need to be seen, the need to be liked, the need to be chosen. You cannot master yourself while being enslaved to reaction. So the first step is brutal. Begin the fast. Starve the need for approval. Starve the need for noise. Starve the hunger for someone to come rescue you from your own emptiness. You were not meant to be filled from the outside. You were meant to build something so strong inside, the outside loses all power. And yes, it will feel like death. The detox always does. Your mind will scream for distraction, for sugar, for softness. Let it scream. It will not kill you. It is the version of you that begs for scraps that must die. When you begin to need less, you begin to see more. You see how much time you gave to people who fed off your neediness. You see how often you betrayed yourself to stay liked. You see how your entire life was shaped not by choice, but by dependency. And when you truly see it, you can destroy it, slowly, daily, relentlessly, until your peace is not conditional. Until your schedule is not determined by guilt, until your value is not dictated by who claps, you will walk differently, speak differently, choose differently, because a man who needs nothing becomes everything. He is calm in rejection, clear in solitude, deadly in silence, and most importantly, untouchable. Most people fear being alone because they've never met the version of themselves that emerges in silence. They stay busy, surrounded, and distracted not because they're social, but because they're afraid of what will surface when the noise dies. But Machiavelli understood something darker, something more dangerous. Greatness is never built in the crowd. It is built in retreat. Tactical isolation is not loneliness. It is strategy. It is the cold decision to pull away from anything that weakens your edge, your clarity, your direction. You cannot master yourself in the middle of constant stimulation. You cannot build focus while drowning in validation. You cannot transform while surrounded by people who expect you to stay the same. So you vanish. Not as an act of rebellion, but as an act of creation. You cut the noise. You disappear from the group chat. You stop explaining. You walk out of the room they keep trying to lock you inside. And in that silence, something terrifying happens. You begin to hear your own mind. The real one, not the one shaped by trends, timelines, or trauma. The one that knows what needs to be done. The one that sees your flaws with ruthless clarity. The one that can no longer lie to itself. And this is where most men quit. They run back to the noise, the comfort, the crowd, because silence exposes everything. But the few who stay, they change. In isolation, you train, you break, you build, you watch your excuses bleed out, you test your discipline when no one is watching. You get stronger, not in front of mirrors, but behind closed doors. You become the kind of man who doesn't need to say he's different. It radiates in his presence. Tactical isolation doesn't mean cutting everyone forever. It means cutting what clouds you until your vision returns. It means removing every voice that speaks fear into your potential. It means becoming immune to the guilt that tries to drag you back into mediocrity. And when you re-emerge, they will notice. Your words will carry weight. Your presence will unsettle. You will no longer seek the room's approval, you will define the room. That is the gift of isolation, the rebirth of self without contamination, the unshakable center. The cold eyes of someone who trained in the dark. So disappear, not to hide but to sharpen. Let them wonder, let them gossip, let them call it arrogance. You will call it strategy, and when it's time, you will return, but not as the man who left. Most people worship motivation. They wait for it, chase it, get high off it, and when it fades, so does their discipline. But Machiavelli would laugh at that. He knew that real power doesn't come from motivation. It comes from machinery, from the cold, repetitive, unexciting systems that turn average men into unstoppable forces. If you want to become the best version of yourself, you must stop dreaming and start engineering. Stop fantasizing about outcomes and start obsessing over structure. You don't need bigger goals, you need smaller, sharper habits. Men fail not because they lack vision, but because they lack rhythm. They try to change their life in a weekend, burn out by Wednesday, and repeat the cycle until they hate themselves. But the man who builds daily systems becomes inevitable. He does not rise based on how he feels. He rises because it's written in his code. Wake, move, build, repeat, no fanfare, no delay, no applause. This is how a kingdom is built, not in bursts, but in bricks. The gym is not about fitness, it's about identity. The cold shower is not about health, it's about discipline. The reading, the journaling, the quiet walks, they are rituals of alignment. And when done daily, they create something unshakable. The weak chase extremes, the wise build routines. Because when your actions are automatic, your results stop being optional. You no longer need to decide if you'll show up. You just do. And that consistency compounds into confidence. Confidence that no man can give you and no failure can take away. The world loves to mock routine. They call it boring, robotic, obsessive. Let them. Because while they burn out trying to stay excited, you will rise through repetition. This is not about being perfect. It's about being programmed. You train your body, your mind, your time to obey the version of you that's coming, not the one that's still doubting. And yes, it will be boring. It will be silent. It will feel like nothing is changing. That is the test. If you can show up without reward, without noise, without proof, then you are no longer ordinary. You are becoming dangerous. So forget the fantasy. Build the factory. Create the systems that turn you into the kind of man who doesn't need motivation anymore because he has already become the machine. Everyone wants to grow, but no one wants to bleed. They speak of strength until it's time to suffer. They romanticize resilience, but break at the first sign of pressure. Machiavelli understood that pain is not the enemy, it is the forge. If you want to become the best version of yourself, you must stop avoiding pain and start alchemizing it. Pain is not something to escape, it is something to use. Every rejection, every betrayal, every disappointment holds fuel. And the man who can harness that pain without collapsing under it becomes something others cannot even recognize. Most people feel pain and ask, why me? The master feels pain and asks, What can I build with this? Because pain, when wielded correctly, becomes the sharpest blade. It cuts away delusion. It exposes weakness. It reveals the truth. Comfort never will. You cannot become unbreakable in a life designed for ease. Growth that costs you nothing will give you nothing. So stop numbing it. Stop avoiding it. Stop looking for shortcuts through it. Sit with it. Study it. Turn it into rituals, into code, into decisions that make sure you never feel that same pain again. You got hurt? Good, now train harder. You got abandoned? Good, now become emotionally immune. You got humiliated? Good, now learn how to move in silence. Pain will either sharpen you or shatter you. That is the choice. That is the test. And if you do not choose to sharpen, you will bleed forever without transformation. But the man who decides to turn his pain into fuel becomes terrifying. He walks with the memory of the fire, not the scar. He no longer fears loss because he's already bled and survived. He no longer begs for comfort because comfort made him soft. And he no longer waits to be saved because pain taught him to save himself. This is not about masochism. This is about power. Power over the one thing that most people spend their whole lives running from: discomfort. Train yourself to walk toward it, to breathe through it, to thank it for showing you who you were and who you can now become. Let the pain change you, not into something weaker, not into something colder, but into something sharper, calmer, harder to destroy. Because once you've learned how to use pain, nothing can own you again. There is no greater waste of energy than the need to be understood. Yet most people live addicted to it, constantly explaining, justifying, oversharing in the hope that someone will finally get them. But Machiavelli would tell you, the man who explains himself is already beneath the one who doesn't need to, because the moment you start defending your choices, you've already admitted you need approval. You've already surrendered the throne. If you want to master yourself, you must kill this need completely. Let them misunderstand you. Let them misjudge your silence. Let them build false stories in their heads. You are not here to be decoded. You are here to become undeniable. And that doesn't require words. It requires results, outcomes, precision. You do not owe the world your inner workings. You do not need to break yourself into pieces for them to comprehend. The truth is, most people don't even want to understand you. They want to shrink you, categorize you, make you familiar so they can feel safe. But you are not here to make others feel safe. You are here to build something rare. And rarity does not explain itself. Rarity moves in silence. It confuses. It unsettles. It evokes emotion without asking for permission. The moment you accept that not everyone will get your path, your purpose, your process, you gain your power back. You become focused, clean, lethal. Because now you no longer waste time defending the direction you're going. You just go, you execute, you evolve. And those who were never meant to walk with you, they fall away. Not because you push them, but because they cannot keep up with someone who no longer slows down to be interpreted. This is the level you must reach, where you move so deeply in alignment with your own law, the noise no longer even tempts you, where the only validation you need is your own standards, your own mirror, your own results. From this place, everything changes. You start choosing actions that serve your future, not your image. You stop reacting to gossip, rumors, and doubt because none of it pays your price. And slowly, the world adapts. They stop expecting you to explain. They start observing, studying, respecting. And that is the highest form of clarity, not being understood, but being undeniable. So let them talk. Let them fill the silence with whatever stories they need. Your silence is not weakness. It is power. It is war without announcement. And when the dust clears, it is always the quiet ones left standing. They will misunderstand you. They will question your motives, twist your words, reduce your decisions to gossip. And if you are not careful, you will waste your entire life trying to fix the story in their heads. Machiavelli would call that a fatal distraction. He knew that power is never built by those obsessed with their image. It is built by those who control their narrative, not their reputation. Your story is not what they say. Your story is what you become. And when you understand this, you stop playing defense. You stop correcting lies, chasing approval, or explaining your evolution to people who never cared to see you clearly. Their version of you is not your responsibility. What matters is the version you are building in silence. The one who acts with precision, not reaction. The one who can walk through fire without stopping to shout that it hurts. The one who can lose everything and still choose composure over collapse. That is narrative. That is legacy. That is what lasts. Reputation fades. Perception changes. But the man who controls his own direction, regardless of how he's viewed, becomes untouchable. The need to be liked, defended, or understood weakens you. It puts your power in their mouth. It makes you a character in someone else's drama. But when you no longer need to be seen as right, you are free to do what is necessary. The world will always misunderstand the disciplined. They will call you cold when you set boundaries, arrogant when you protect your time, selfish when you walk away. Let them. Because you do not serve their comfort, you serve your mission. And missions are not run through committee. They are executed by leaders who are willing to be seen as the villain if it means reaching the goal. So, control your story. Not with words, but with action. Do not argue, elevate. Do not explain, outperform. Let your results choke their doubt. Let your evolution offend those committed to your past. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to become undeniable. And when they talk, because they will remember this, every great figure in history was misunderstood, criticized, envied. Not because they were wrong, but because they were too far ahead to be comfortable. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be legendary. And legends do not lower themselves to correct the crowd. They rise above it, silent, focused, unshakable. A powerful man is not loud. He is predictable in his actions and unreadable in his emotions. Machiavelli knew this truth. To rule others, you must first become immune to being read. Most people are emotionally transparent. You can see their fear in their posture, their weakness in their tone, their desperation in the way they speak too much, explain too fast, react too quickly. They live as open books, easily flipped, easily studied, easily controlled. But the man who is predictable in results and silent in feeling, that man is a mystery, and mystery is terrifying. Your enemies, your critics, your competition, they do not need to know what you feel. They only need to see what you deliver. That is the edge. Let others cry to be understood while you become the one they cannot anticipate. When you master your emotional opacity, they will stop trying to manipulate you. Why? Because they won't know where to push. You must become unreadable, not cold, not fake, but contained. And you must become so ruthlessly consistent in your execution that even your worst day looks like discipline. This is the difference between being impressive and being respected. Impressive is loud. Respect is silent. Impressive fades. Respect compounds. People should not be able to tell whether you are thriving or bleeding. They should not know when you are exhausted, broken, enraged, betrayed. They should only know that you showed up again, and delivered again, and remained composed again. That rhythm becomes your dominance. It becomes the reason you rise while others collapse under pressure, because pressure is not the enemy. Exposure is. The moment they can predict your emotion, they can predict your next move. But if you can keep your internal world sealed off, if you can hold the line with no visible crack, you are no longer reacting, you are directing. And when people cannot read you, they cannot reduce you. You stop being small enough to fit into their expectations. You become something else entirely, a presence that cannot be ignored, a force that cannot be decoded. That is self-mastery. Not just in performance, but in presence. So speak less, deliver more. Let them wonder how you never seem shaken, how you never seem tired, how you never seem emotional. Let them guess, let them assume, let them project. Because the more they try to figure you out, the more they exhaust themselves chasing a version of you that only exists in their minds while you, calm and composed, continue to build in silence. Becoming the best version of yourself is not a goal. It is a death and a rebirth done daily, done privately, done without applause. Machiavelli understood that true power is not declared. It is demonstrated through who you choose to become when no one is watching. Self-mastery is not a finish line. It is a law, a code written in your behavior, your silence, your discipline, and your refusal to break when everything else does. The final version of you is not someone you stumble into. He is not born from a good mood or a viral quote. He is carved out of suffering, shaped by isolation, refined through discipline, and kept alive by a relentless standard. He is not the man who reacts. He is the man who calculates. He is not the man who is driven by praise. He is the man who becomes dangerous in its absence. He does not move for validation. He moves because it is in his nature to dominate his own life. Every day, the weak version of you will try to return in comfort, in excuses, in emotion. Your job is to kill him again, without hesitation, without explanation, because once you accept that no one is coming to save you, that the world owes you nothing, and that weakness has never won a single war, you begin to rise. You stop asking for the path and start becoming the weapon. You build without permission. You walk without noise. You master yourself so thoroughly that your silence becomes louder than their noise. That is the final version. Not a man who has everything, but a man who needs nothing. Not a man who avoids pain, but a man who consumes it. Not a man who seeks to be understood, but a man who becomes undeniable. And once you become that, you no longer chase peace. You carry it. You no longer chase power. You radiate it. You no longer chase greatness. You become it, quietly, ruthlessly, relentlessly. The throne is not earned by the loudest. It is earned by the last man standing. So stand, bleed if you must, burn if you have to, but do not break. You were not built to be liked. You were built to be legendary. If you're done explaining yourself, if you're ready to kill the weaker version and build the one they can't break, subscribe. This channel isn't for the soft. It's for those ready to rule in silence, act with precision, and rise without permission. Like the video, share it with someone who's still sleeping. And remember, self-mastery begins when comfort ends.